let's talk car prices. When I started this channel, it was all about going to the police auction, picking up a car for, 10 to 25% of what you would have to pay if you went to a dealer or something like that. And you could find Crown Vics all day long that were in reasonably decent shape for around $1,500, maybe top like $3,000 for just a unicorn of a Crown Vic that had low mileage, and maybe it was a detective car or like an alternate car that didn't get driven much or something like that. And that pretty much continued, through 17, 18, and 19. And then, there's lots of theories. Is it because of YouTube channels kind of exposing how good these older cop cars are? Is it COVID shutdowns that's made things scarce, and so when you have demand and not a lot of supply, the price goes up? It could be something as simple as that. Probably a combination of factors, to be honest. But I am basically not buying vehicles right now because the prices are just outrageous. I have to assume that it's a bubble that's going to burst. I can't imagine that these prices are going to stay as high as they are. But of course, I could be wrong on that. I mean, they could continue to go up. But my criteria was always to get onto one of the valuation sites like KBB or NADA and try to find one that offered values for the fleet or police vehicles as opposed to the civilian models. For example, a lot of them, you can find Charger RT values, but maybe you can't find the Charger Pursuit values and things like that. So I would search around until I found one that had the actual police values, and if not, then I just have to do the best I could to try to guesstimate the difference between, because normally the civilian ones are going to go higher just because the belief that they're not driven as rough, better cared for, whatever. But what I would do is look at the rough trade and kind of use that as my guide for what I should bid on a car, because the auctions that I do are online, and a lot of them you can't go look at the car, or if you can, it's a limited window of opportunity at an inconvenient time if you've got a life outside of buying cars, and it's not really a meaningful inspection of the car. You can't drive it or anything, so a lot of it is just a couple photos, in some cases 2 photos, a picture of the front from one side and a picture of the back from the opposite side, and that's all you got. And so obviously there's a lot of risk to bidding on something like that, and unless you have a friend at the police department that is like, oh hey, yeah, that car, we just put a new transmission in it, it's great, but they're retiring it because they're changing the color of the fleet, which is how I got my Silver Vic. They were getting rid of all the cars that weren't black, and so the Silver Vic had been pretty much pampered, all sorts of maintenance and things like that done to it, and they're just retiring it because of the color of the car. But that's a rare one. Normally, like I said, you don't have any inside info. So I would use the rough trade as my guide, and that served me well. I mean, I've been lucky with buying cars that none of them have turned out to be quote-unquote lemons. They've all run, they've all been reliable. I mean, still daily drive both Vics and the Charger, and none of them have had any kind of, you know, problems per se. I mean, they've had, you know, just maintenance stuff. But the Charger, I went ahead and changed out all of the suspension parts. I wouldn't call that necessarily a problem as much as an expected maintenance item. I mean, Chargers tend to tear up the suspension, just the reality of them. And the ride was so rough and uncomfortable and unpredictable before I did it that it was a good change. Now the ride is much more like my Crown Vics, you know, more comfortable. You don't hit every bump as if you have no suspension, stuff like that. Anyway, I'm getting all long-winded here, but so I would use the rough trade as my guideline. And in recent auctions, you know, I was looking at bidding on the Taurus Interceptor and the Explorer Interceptor, on a couple of them. And I found some that were not turbos. I found some that were not all-wheel drive, and of course I found some that were turbos with all-wheel drive, which is what I was hoping to get. And they are all going now for clean retail or higher at auctions. And that's, like I said, sight unseen, no test drive. You know, you're just basically bidding based on pictures that you're seeing. So I was not willing to pay full retail or more for a car, and then of course not only do you have that cost, but then I don't have any way to go get it myself. I guess I could have somebody drive me up there and then illegally drive it home and hope that I didn't get stopped and ticketed on the way home, but that's not my style. So I would have to pay somebody to haul it. So you'd have another couple hundred to maybe $1,000 depending on where it was and everything. And then of course you have all the fees associated with the auction. That you might be lucky, that might just be, you know, getting a cashier's check overnighted to the auction house. Or some of them are getting kind of bold and asking for fees on top of your bid. So, you know, they're calling it a buyer's premium of, you know, 5%, 10%. I think I've seen as high as like 15 or 20%. And obviously that can mess you up too. And then of course, unless you're planning on putting it on private property and not driving it and just trying to sell it like that, you've got registration and insurance. So you start factoring all that in, and it's really a gamble. Of course, I kind of kick myself for not winning some of those bids, but you know, I'll never know. I mean, it may have been a good thing that I didn't win them. The vehicles appeared to be nice, but you know, obviously I never found out what happened to them after the auction. I don't know, you know, they end up being just a gem of a buy, and you know, somebody's loving them as a daily driver, or somebody kicking themselves, putting in, you know, water pump and other kind of expected problems for those vehicles. Anyway, kind of a long-winded video, but that's what's going on with the car prices right now, and that's not just the auctions, that's everywhere. Let me know in the comments what you think. You think it's YouTube channels creating a lot of demand for these? Do you think it's COVID and shortages? Or do you think it's something else?